All right. Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to the channel. Yeah, great to be here with all of you, making me look just that much more brilliant. Thank you very much for joining me. Let's see. Ooh, I have to. Apparently we've been having technical issues for quite some time now. Went back and basically redid everything that we've been doing. So we will get started now. For those who do not know, this show is TriCast. Um, it is both broadcast on our Discord server, Twitch, and YouTube. So sometimes we do have some technical issues. And let me change the metadata here. There we go. We are live in Twitch. Thank you very much there, Twitch, for letting me get these out here. All right, so today, sorry about the preamble. Been having quite a number of issues lately, which is really bizarre. As someone had mentioned before, tech apocalypse, I guess, is the issue that we've been having. All right, so the series that we kind of I've kind of shoehorned in here, heading into the larger holiday season, is this idea of like cutting class, a little bit of a play on words there, where we're taking a classic Dungeons and Dragons class like the fighter and breaking it apart. And uh, two of my favorite days, today being World Building Wednesday and Third Pillar Thursday, are um, I love the idea of taking like something really small or even simple or even innocuous and then taking it and expanding it out. And so I thought today would be a great time to uh, delve into the fifth edition fighter and develop a world based around them. And so I thought I would do this, strangely enough, by going into the fighter class itself, the basics of it. Now, I understand that there are, in fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons, there's plenty of subclasses and modifications and things of that nature. But I, I think that does a disservice to the basics of the character class, if that makes sense, as far as where we're starting at a baseline and then developing our world thereafter, right? So I thought we would try to look at the class, figure it out, and then develop from there. Hey, Andres. All right, so the first thing I want to say is that in a world, because this is World Building Wednesday, and whatever, for those who don't know, this show goes live Monday through Friday. And on World Building Wednesday, whatever subject we're talking about, whether we've talked about festivals, we've talked about Medusas, psionics, dragons, celestials, all even meta gaming parts. Like I talked about the triangle. I love myself the triangle of interaction, where it's like the PCs, the enemy, and then something else happening. And today's talking about the fighter. I thought we could talk about, in terms of world building. One of the main things that fighters have is, well, looking at the class structure. One of the things they have is access to all the weapons and all the armor, which means that in our world building, we have to have an industry that basically creates lots of weapons and lots of armor, and a reason for that. So I think the basis of that is just to pull from real life. Is that we have to have a number of nations and factions and industry that requires lots of protection, where the threat of battle, not just battle, but the threat of battle is probably on everybody's mind. I'm thinking in a real world sense that this is in this fighter modified, fighter influenced world, that it is not just a matter of lots of skirmishes and battles happening outside, but there are uh, people who have access to weapons and maybe some skills with those weapons, and it's necessary for other combat enabled individuals to have a lot of weapons. So, and what bigger threat to your nation, to your border nations, than to you having a well equipped, well armored, well highly skilled and trained military force. Whether that's true or not, it remains to be seen. But the idea that they do have access to that, or at least the threat that there is, that keeps you safe from others who understand that you may have expert. You can easily establish a militia. Let's say if you're in a small community, much like in the States when the first um when the United States was first created and you had yourself the 13 colonies, there was the idea of an armed militia. And so the threat was, okay, maybe we don't have a standing army, but we can assemble one very quickly. And so I'm imagining a world designed that way. Now, where yes, the PCs can walk around in this world probably pretty much unmolested by carrying lots of heavy weapons and such, but the threat of being in this world means that if they start a fight, there's a good chance they're gonna confront other people who may pull their weapons out of their ass and start uh, and start like defending themselves. I'm also thinking that in this world, much like the basic fighter has access to fighting styles, that there would be factions, community, regions, however you want to divide it up, that are specialists in their fighting styles because wherever they're based, either historically or by their leadership, or maybe there's a cultural connection, that the fighting style becomes a known way that those people learn how to fight. So an example would be like here are some the example fighting styles are like archery, where you get an attack bonus with ranged weapons, which may not necessarily be archery, but it might be ranged weapons like art the classic bow from archery, crossbows, javelins and spears, slings, what have you. Maybe it depends on where they live. Like maybe they live on the plains and they have long ranges, or they live in a mountainous region where they can uh, fire attacks from down on enemies below, or they live in trees or something like that. Other fighting styles are defense, so they get increased defense by wearing armor. There's dueling. There's a great weapon fighting style. There's protection, where you protect others. There's two weapon fighting. So I'm imagining a world, since we are world building with fighters here, that we've moved past the zero level, guardsmen or something, but we're literally going into, like, maybe you've gone to the north and they are like the classic Vikings, where they're making shield walls, and you're going to the south and they're riding on horseback and they're using um, spears and pikes and curved swords and striking from horseback. And so of course we could pull from our own histories, where we can go around the world, from anywhere from like Mongolia to India to Peru, to the Arctic Circle, and figure out how these people are fighting, and then how they are fighting, what techniques they are using to fight, and then shaping a community around those fighting tactics. And I can almost rest assured, like, uh, that the environment that they live in, along with like history, probably has a lot to do with their fighting styles. And it would be kind of cool for player PCs to travel from place to place to, like, oh, in this one place they're fighting on horseback, and they're literally, like, when I say fighting on horseback, like they're literally like standing up on the horseback, like jumping from horse to horse or mount to mount. whether they're like elephants or camels um, or anything of that nature, maybe even winged creatures or snakes or something. And then in another community, they don't use mounted animals, mounted creatures, because it's just impossible. Maybe it's like a dense jungle or something. And each location, the fighting style changes, and so the PCs have to change the way they operate. And Andrews Martin says a world like a Wuxia movie with noble houses or regions devoted to different combat styles. Oh, hells yes. Now, I know this kind of sounds like, well, we're not talking about fighters, we're talking about monks, right? But and the answer to that, in a way, is yes, depending on how specific you want to get the fighting styles, right? Like, for example, like you're talking about wuxia movies where there's like martial arts noble houses that have different fighting styles, whether the fighting styles based on, let's go with like earth, air, fire, water, or they're based on lion, snake, unicorn, and manticore or something. And so the general population would fight in the manticore style, but maybe the specialized school is based around like your classic Dungeons and Dragons classes, like monks, rangers, barbarians, that kind of thing. Matter of fact, even if you go with like, okay, since we're doing this, I think in the classic martial arts, because I'm an old grognard. I remember the old Saturday afternoon kung fu flicks where fighting doesn't necessarily have to lead to death and conflict. Where sure, we can have massive armies and people fighting, but duels, I think, might become a thing. Or okay, let me name a bunch of these where you have a rota, much like the capoeira rota, where you have a circle of fighters. There's the Roman Greek idea of the two armies coming together, but the armies surround their major fighters, their most valued fighters, so they can see them fight. It's the knighthood and the tourneys where they start to have competitions with archery and warriors, using lances and such. My mind is going to a lot of things. Like I'm thinking of even a Western style where you're 6 shooters and you have a duel at high noon in the middle of the field. Like lots of conflicts might be settled this way, either friendly, meaning like wrestling matches, archery competitions, maybe just Olympic competitions. Who can run, lift, jump, who has the greatest endurance. I don't know if you guys did this when you were kids. We used to have Superman competitions where we were pretty stupid, where we punch each other in the stomach and face and everything, which I don't understand why we did this. But when you're you're a single digit child, running and jumping and wrestling and fighting and things is it's like it's the base unit of measurement socially. And so, having the ability, and then of course you start to separate yourself, like, hey, maybe I can't wrestle, but I sure can outrun you. So let's have a running competition or a climbing competition. And of course, fighters in 5th edition, their 3 main stats are strength, dex, and constitution, right? So the measurement of those, both friendly and lethally, I can imagine being a very interesting thing in and around the society. So when the PCs come into town, having people arm wrestle or having open pits of fighting. I don't know if you guys ever seen the television show. I got to bring up something, right? So I highly recommend anybody who is anyone who role plays to please search for the show Spartacus. There were 4 seasons of that show, and it was excellent. You have to see Spartacus. And the idea that there are fighting pits and arenas or something, I think would be very emblematic of a world controlled by fighters, because even the people who hire fighters or recruit them or want to train them are going to want to see like who's the best, who's the strongest, who's the smartest, who's the most perceptive. Um, even simple things like height, weight, uh, uh, endurance, or something. People, others will want to test. And what better way to prove to your enemies that our fighters are better than yours by having tourneys of some sort or another, and then enemy nations or factions or something are like, we don't want to f with them because those guys are like really good at throwing knives or like shooting bows or something like that. We're gonna have to watch out. Um, Cameron says, I used to body box with friends. One of them watched Fight Club. Guess what he wanted to do? Yeah, yeah. Listen, I used to explain this as I got a teenager and we still continued our body boxing, right? Um, sure, on one context, you could say that socially it's a little bit of an idiocy to body box for some reason. But on the other hand, like I used to explain, no more dragons to slay. So what are we supposed to do? You know, the same thing happened really and I'm saying this very generally, but the same thing happened in Japan with the samurai class, right? Before peace, there was war, and the samurai class was devoted to war, and it was an unwritten form of training for samurai. Like samurai came in all shapes and sizes. They used it. They used damn near every kind of weapon and armor. And then when peace came, the samurai schools happened because they still need to kill something. Hey, we still need to slay some dragons, but since there's no more dragons around, what are we supposed to do? So then the schools start. So I'm thinking there would be these schools. But now that I'm talking about schools, I'm thinking also with like fighters creating this world, shaping this, since we're world building with them, I'm sure there would be lots of outsiders as well. Individuals who want to, like, for example, let's pick another fighting style, like, okay, like protection. All right, so the fighting style for fighters for protection would be like when a creature you can see attacks a target other than you that is within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on the attack roll. You must be wielding a shield. So, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is like, for me, is like Vikings, right? Where they, it's a phalanx, it's shield walling. And Cam's like, fighting school? I've seen that anime. Yeah. Lots of anime based around that. Yep. And like Andrews Martin says, protection style equals shield maidens. So, yeah, shield maidens, what are we, squires and whatnot. And so I'm thinking like, so imagine the PCs go to a region where it's nothing to see just damn near everybody carrying a shield on their back, or you see like Viking boats where you see shields lining the boats, or you go to someone's home and you just see like the friggin' front door's got like 5 shields hanging. It's not even a door anymore. It's like a you could actually pull it off the hinges, and it's like a shield wall or something, like a phalanx or whatever. And in in between all these people who are trained with shields, you would have these other subclasses, right? Who would break out of these shield walls to do things like our eldritch knights and samurai and knights, but reskinned for the world, so they would be knights and eldritch knights and samurais and these other subclasses of fighter, but reskinned for your realm, and they would bust out because they'd be the specialist who would, like the archer, behind a shield wall, archer shows up, boom, pops somebody, pops back down. And so what I'm thinking is there might even be, like, I could imagine this being very effective, but also being very traditional, in the sense that, how we as humans are. Once something becomes effective, we're very reluctant to change what we do. And then, like, for example, like Andrews Martin brings up, like, protection style equals shield maidens. Maybe women are the only ones trained with shields, right? And in this particular community, they literally are the shield maidens. Like, hey, listen, if you're female, you better learn to carry a shield and use that shield and protect. Like the dudes are going to run out in the combat, and the ladies stay back and they protect the shield. And maybe it was necessary to do so to protect like the young or nobles or something, or maybe so many men in this patriarchal society died that the women are learn this, but then maybe society starts to change and shift. And so, sure, 8 generations learn to do this, but now they've got to learn something else. Cameron says, in all seriousness, though, a world with fighting schools would be awesome. Imagine the things you would learn from studying abroad. Oh, hell yeah. And then, all right, so follow me on this. Maybe every other character class is a fighter. All right, so like Andrews Martin brings up flail combat style, goes to shield combat style, he's a range style, right? Like so maybe it starts to shift over. So the shield maidens start using like flails and whips and Kusurigama style, like chained or rope or meteor hammer style weapons that they can fling. And then maybe that flinging, that longer range, becomes something else. Like you mentioned before, Cam, like I think the spear is probably pound for pound, probably the most, the cheapest, most effective pole weapon ever designed ever in the world, right? But it's not given a lot of credit. But maybe in this world, yeah, it might be like a spear might be the epitome of a weapon, and then everything else is surrounded by it. And like you're mentioning, Andrews Martin, like the flail style combat might be like a subsection of a thing. Like it's kind of in between like shield fighting and ranged combat, because they're able to like maybe the range is just 10 feet, 10 to 20 feet, depending on how long the chains can go. And then maybe their shield combat is like half and half. Like, all right, form the shield. They form this big dome. And then all of a sudden the dome opens up. You see all these combatants like flinging their meteor hammers out or something. And maybe every other character class is a fighter of some type. Like clerics don't worship gods, but they worship ancestral fighters, warriors of some sort. And so all of their capabilities, like lay on hands isn't lay on hands. It's like, get the hell up, soldier, and it just so happens that the person with their organs dying on the combat field is just like, yes, sir. And they get up and they basically are healed to get back into battle or something. Maybe there are statues and monoliths or something dedicated to the greatest fighters. Warlocks might be even, instead of warlocks being, fiendish creatures or something, maybe all of the fiends and outer realm creatures in this world are nothing but warriors. It's you could go to Valhalla or you can go to Hades, but whichever way, you're going to be fighting forever. What do you want to do? And maybe every other character class, like monk, maybe there's, we know what the word monk implies, but in this world, maybe there isn't really much of a difference between fighter and monk. It's more like it would be the difference of, say, it might only be the difference of Spartan and gladiator, right? We know that they seem similar, but in this world, maybe gladiator is more of a monk style, or Spartan is more of a monk style fighting capability, whereas a Roman legionnaire is a traditional fighter, whatnot. What's another character class like bard? A bard on a battlefield is very much like a battle master fighter. It might not be much of a difference. Bards might be a military school like ROTC here in the States, where you're inducted into a military leadership kind of thing, and you know how to speak to those around you to no, I'm not focusing. I inadvertently picked a time period, but I am in no way trying to pick a time period. I'm just talking about fighters in general, and they just happen to be the first thing that came to mind. Gaster says, what angle are we going at in this world? Roman, medieval, or something balls off the wall? I would say balls off the wall, though, but remember, the world is controlled by manipulated and shaped by fighters itself. You're so silly. Cam's like a bard equals a drunk fighter with a kazoo. Well, drunk fighting might be a thing. And yeah, oh, I know you having a couple ideas there, Gaster, with Two Soul. um, Andrews Martin says, I remember in third edition, you could make the overfighter like two weapons, two dagger boots, a braid blade, horned helm. Yeah, oh, I remember that. Yeah. Anyway, bearded devil, faceplate, spiked armor. That was a strange combo. Yeah, like you could. They had because they had versions of like spiked helms and the spiked beard and armor that had spikes on it and whatnot. Yeah, why not? Why the hell not? Why wouldn't it exist in this world and be well respected? And as a matter of fact, even like maybe even the economy is um is shaped differently. Like I for some reason I remember there being, and I'm pretty sure this came from a documentary I saw on the forging of katanas, but there were these iron bars, and they had like a sigil inside of them, and the iron bar was the a bar that was the ore that would forge other weapons, and maybe the iron bar becomes the form of currency instead of your typical gold coin or something like um maybe there's some sort of like medals given out for honorable combat might be a thing that's gathered in these ancient battlefields that have been like stacked from years and years of battles and such, and they become these coins almost like badges of honor, but people walk around with them in pouches because there've been it's like Warhammer 40K, where there's always been battles forever, and it's just a matter of which epoch or which era you assign yourself to. Gaster says, Bastion, the world is ridden with ancient creatures awakened from the lands called Colossi, and now humans have migrated to large walled cities called bastions. Um, I could see that if it is the fact that everyone has had to learn to accommodate themselves with fighting outside like these city walls, and darn near everybody has to learn either a fighting style or support. And if you are non-combatant, you support the fighting regime, right? Like a wizard might be something different. Maybe a wizard is more of a historian who looks up old battles and is able to, maybe their magic isn't the classic wizard with the hat and sprinkling things, but instead they are able to reconnect with past battles, and their magic is an overlay of past battles of something that has happened. So it's not like yeah, and just like a soldier's dog tag. Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Like dog tags, badges that people get, like literally um badges that soldiers get from distinction in war, or um something of that nature. I think the dog tag idea is far better, but maybe that becomes the coin in this world where maybe they're not even made, maybe they're no longer created now, but over so many of because of a millennia of fighting, they still exist from the past and they're used like coins today, which would be pretty sad and a little disrespectful, I think, but emblematic of this world where fighters have taken over. Um, Gaster's talking about some hidden away, some towns hidden away, some are underground. Maybe their magic is more alchemical based, having them have to remember ingredients for things like a fireball or a healing spell. Oh yeah, like I was even thinking like instead of casting a fireball in the classic, Hirokin style, maybe when a wizard casts a fireball, like a shadow image of a catapult appears that launches this thing through the air that is a fireball, like much much like Saint Seiya or something, where you see the person standing there, but this shadowy image of a thing appears around them, and then a thing happens. Like instead of okay, so in I'm trying to think of something else. Like instead of a thunder wave spell, a person who casts a spell summons ancient warriors from the past who are like spirits who just like run past them like a wave and blow through the enemy ranks. Like everything would be shaped around these fighters. Like maybe a wizard's shield spell literally is a shield. Like it, a magic missile spell isn't a magic missile spell. It is, you know, three pikes that this wizard holds their hands up, and then like three pikes appear behind their back, and then all of a sudden they shoot out, or three maces appear in the air and they spin around or something. Like it would all be shaped in and around this fighting styled arena. Now, mind you, you'd have to really. This is very much narratively based in my mind, but yeah, that's exactly what I said. Tired, need sleep. You're all right, man. You literally, your namesake means that you're probably going to show up a little bit late to the party. So whatever, you're fine. And Cameron says, now I want to play in a party of traveling prize fighters, getting into hijinks and saving cats. Well, see, this is kind of a strange thing for a world filled with fighters. Sure, there would be a lot of death and destruction because people were pulling out blunt and edged weapons and killing each other. But on the other hand, boxing matches, wrestling, lots of like, what's the obstacle course, Bud's style, survivalist kinds of conflicts could be happening that have nothing to do with me killing the other individual. Like two adversaries might be like, you know what? In the town of Two Blades, there's this ancient tradition of running up to the mountaintop and getting a feather from where the Pegasus lives up in the mountains. I don't think you can make it. And they're like, what do you mean? I don't think you can make it. And then the people are like, ooh, they're gonna do the run. And all of a sudden, the adversaries starting to pull off their armor, and the PCs are like, what are you doing? And they're like, got to go down in the loincloths there, buddy. Let's see if you can make it. Let's see if you can make it as far as I can. And that might be kind of a cool, like, okay, so we literally have to strip off our armor, hand it a dagger, run through a dangerous part of like the woods or something, run through the swamp, climb up a mountain, get to the top, get a feather that's like up in this mountain range, get back to town, while you're literally racing against your adversaries or something. And maybe none of that has to do with killing your enemy. Maybe it's just about it's all bravado. It's all chest, puffing your chest out. It's all about who can lift the most or push the most or jump the farthest or something of that nature. And getting in a boxing match with your adversary, and who can, let's fight the first blood. Whoever's down to half hit points wins, right? That's the I just punched you in the gut and broke a rib, or we're knife fighting and I was the first person to draw first blood or something. Maybe that's a measurement. And of course, as a session zero, everybody would have to embrace this idea. Like, yeah, it's not 0 to 60 murder hoboing your way through this world. Maybe it literally is, oh, you want to deal with us? Toss a knife down at your foot. All right, let's see what you got. And then boom, you get in a knife fight. And then 1, 2, 3, ooh, I cut my enemy. And then everyone stops the fight, and everybody embraces and does like the manly does the man hug, right? You grab the other person in the hand, and then you grab the other hand around their back, like, yo, okay, all right, you got that, hanging with the lizard men or something, like, all right, I give that to you. And maybe there's a bit of a there's lots of testosterone flowing around in this kind of world, maybe. And Gaster Woods says, maybe, let's see, fighters might have higher tech weapons with things like swords, which are retractable, allowing them to carry these swords a lot easier, only to release these swords into the Colossus body. Holding off on the Colossus thing, high-tech weapons? I'm I'm with that. What is it? Chain swords that look like a whip, but then you could turn them into a regular sword, or like some long pike, but you can separate the blade off the end of the pike, which becomes a long sword, and the pike shaft becomes a staff, and then the staff can collapse down, and all those kind of things, or a shield that has blades around the shield, but those blades are literally just daggers you can throw or something. I'm down with that kind of like that would be awesome. Hell, you could have, I don't know, some kind of like scale mail armor, but scale mail armor is just made of like throwing daggers or darts or something. Like it's just like layered on top of it. I'm loving that a lot. Hell, a helmet could be made of. We've in the modern context of Wonder Woman, right? I don't know if you guys remember. I'm an old grognard. I remember when George Perez and Marv Wolfman re conceptualized Wonder Woman, where she became the more Greek and Roman esque warrior with the cape and the weapons and the javelins and the spears and stuff. And she had a helmet where instead of the classic tiara that she would pull off and toss as a boomerang, like she pulled the wings off the helmet and they were like blades and stuff. And so, yeah, I could see that a lot. Gastric also goes on to say maybe these magic missile spells are just throwing spikes with ancient runes carved into them. And when they throw these spikes, they turn into insanely powerful and maybe even explosive weapons. Yeah, maybe the spells aren't spells at all. They are like equipment on your body. Like you actually see them. And to the average individual, they just look like ornaments or maybe even tattoos or just accoutrements that's on your body. Like, that just looks like a medallion holding your short cloak on or something. But when you pull it off, it becomes, like you said, an insanely powerful object or weapon or whatnot. Gaster says maybe illusion spells where you need to make an illusion object, you can just hold up a hand mirror to the object and you could pull out the actual reflection and replace the object with the reflection. Ooh. All right, Gaster, let me see. Let me cut and paste. And we're going to use that later on. But yeah, maybe, like you said, like an illusion or some kind of distraction, like maybe a bladed weapon is a what's something simple like okay, the mirror image spell is like not just creating illusions and mirror images of yourself, but like you've got a blade or something, or you've got something on your shield or helmet or whatever, and you take the blade and you reflect it into the light because the sunlight is just at the right angle, and your enemies are like kind of like blind a little bit, and they see your reflections, multiple images of you, but it's not a true illusion, or it's like it may be somewhere in the middle. Like if you're a desert warrior or something, and there's like mirages, maybe you're able to like ride your, I don't know, your fast moving scorpion mount or something, and enemies are like kind of like blinded by it, by the light and stuff, and it's like, oh, the heat, whatever. Um, so yeah, what else? Oh, fighters also, when it comes to like getting in the battle and the other things, like maybe clerics, maybe every other class type. If you aren't a fighter, you become a support service. We know in our real life, like from 10 to 50 other non-combatant individuals are needed to put a soldier into battle. So maybe a warrior's status is measured by their support staff, because if as a spy or so a spy goes into an enemy realm, they see that the support staff for their warriors is very high, like maybe it's like 25 to 1, and they go back to their home nation and they go, whoa, they've got a lot of support. They've got everything from medics to sages to equipment and blah. So maybe another form of status is like not just me being a knight or a samurai, or hell, us go to something else. Instead of being a Zulu warrior or Persian or Islander warrior. Maybe it's the people that surround you that also represent more of a status. Like, oh, I'm not just a badass with my weapons, but guess what? I've got an armorer, I've got a historian, I've got somebody handling my mount, I've got a shield person behind me, I've got scouts. Like, oh, you want to take me on? I've got a support staff that's going to put me back into battle so fast it'll make your head spin, and everyone's like, ooh, damn, yeah, ooh, we might not want to fight this person, or we're gonna need to bring what's the Spartan 300 Spartan thing. Who did you bring? I brought a farmer. I brought a craftsman. I brought a carpenter. Spartans. Who did we bring? Ooh, right? Like we brought fighters, and that might be the case. Tired needs sleep says a general is highly experienced. A general is a highly experienced veteran older warrior. He or she may not fight, but you can be sure they are vital to the battle plan. Oh, hells yes. Like I said, maybe the other classes, clerics, bards, maybe they are the heed my words before you go into battle battle person, much like the fighter. Of course, we know the battle master, right, as a trope, but maybe they are the person. Hell, a warlock going into battle really makes a lot of sense as a fighter, right? Save my family and I'll serve you in any way. And then the fighter up on high is like, oh, you're going to serve me? Okay, then. Here, let me tell you what to do, and heed my words, because if you don't, these things might happen. And so even reskinning a warlock as a fighter would be pretty interesting, especially if, like I said, ancestral combat, it like an eldritch blast isn't an eldritch blast, but are like eldritch weapons that they summon and throw or use or aim at their enemies. Or maybe they're surrounded by maybe they are surrounded by ancestors of themselves, and a warlock is like an old uncle or aunt or something, like, that talks to them or whatnot. And you could come up with a number of reskinned warlock patrons and whatnot. Gasser says, um, uh, makes the comment of, quote, mage pulls out reflection of a key, opens the door, fighter, nice parlor trick. Mage says, it's not a parlor trick, it's a mirror of copying. Yeah, pulling up a mirror and pulling a key out of it. I like that idea. I like that a lot. Matter of fact, I could see warriors going to battle with symbols of past exploits, and those symbols become real things that they need. Like, I don't know, like a certain type of badge with like a tree on it or something. It's like, remember 3 generations ago, the Battle of Green Veil or something. And then when they go to the Green Veil badge, they pull the badge off and they place it on the ground, and a big tree grows or something like that, or an entangling growth grows around it because of it. Because that's the thing that caused their enemy to be tangled in the woods, and for them to strike back at their enemies because they were unable to get through the dense, rainforest or something. That would be kind of cool. Gaster says, I do like the idea of these mages are just covered in special trinkets, things like small things like a necklace decorated with throwing spikes. Yep, a small hand mirror on their backpack, a special bag of what seemed to be a volcanic rock, a mask of a hawk covered in actual hawk feathers, and maybe even a special staff with weird carvings in the woods. Into the wood. Oh yeah. Oh hell yeah. I'm thinking, even if you go more, what I guess classically would think more tribal, like let's go with, say, stereotypical Africa, where you have ancient masks that are carved. Maybe those carving masks, like carved of like feathers or something, allows them to see very far, or temporarily grow, or wings, or able to jump and leap very far, or have like a gliding kind of effect. Or maybe there's a mask of some kind of predator, like a feline or a canine or something, and they're able to sneak through the woods or mountain passes or something with greater ability. because they've been known to wear these masks. And like you said, they have spears, and the spears have they dangling from the tips around the spears are like sacred totems from various battles from the past and the ones they've gone through. Matter of fact, you could even do leveling up, might literally have trinkets dedicated to their levels. So when you see a warrior with seven of these trinkets dangling from their armor or their wrists or their neck or something, you go, oh, they've been through 7 major battles, or 7, I don't know, whatever the case may be. Then you're like, oh, they're 7th level, right? Maybe that's a little bit too on the nose, but I like it. Going back to what Tired Needs Sleep says about highly experienced generals and whatnot, you could even make the concept that fighters and even some of their more specialized abilities don't come necessarily from their own skill, but they are, when they return home or to their encampment or settlement or what have you, to talk to the more experienced individuals, like the classic sitting around the map and coming up with the battle plan to go back into battle. That interaction is indicative of their special abilities when they go back into battle, right? So a fighter's capability and all these other character class abilities come about because they've gotten like a rejuvenation from speaking to a military leader. Like maybe someone's grandmother was a knight errant at some point, and she's like, you know, my son, you, or my grandson, you're going to go back into battle. I need to let you know that blah 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 blah. And he's like, oh, okay. And then when he goes back into battle, he's got second wind, right? Like maybe that's it's the flashback thing. It's the training montage. It's the I can't give up. I need to keep moving on or whatnot. It's the action surge. It's like she told me they would try to pin us down in the mountain pass. Let's move through this fast, quickly or something and whatnot. So narratively, you could even shape it that way. Gaster says, maybe even dare I say, there's a cloak of invisibility where it's just a sheet that's covered in these Lovecraftian runes that come from the very stone carvings of Riley. Maybe that's where these strange magical spells come from. Weird eldritch aliens that had set up shop on Earth, and now humans are using it, thinking it's magic. I think you're squirreling a little bit away from this fighter concept, but I'll go with you a little bit. Maybe these masks are able to allow mages to turn into the animals they're tied to. And that's sort of a way of fast travel from land to land. However, the person has to be focused to actually wear the mask and transform. Makes a perfect sense as to why druids would be embraced in this fighter-like world. Like maybe the druidic fighters are out there in the wild, and they are the ones who like they give passage through the wilderness, right? The wildlands, like you mentioned before, Gaster, about these city states with massive walls and preventing sieges and such. Which brings me to the idea, because we're going to talk about this tomorrow. Before we get out of here, is the siege, right? Whatever happened to the siege? How come we never, in role-playing games, now I'm sure don't get me wrong, there are role-playing games that actually embrace the idea of the classic siege, but player characters doing a siege or protecting a place from a siege, how cool would that be? Like a real role-playing through a real battlefield where player characters have to move a siege tower into place, or ladders, or throw grappling hooks over top of a wall, or manipulate siege weapons like trebuchets and ballistae and catapults into position. A PC getting a ride on top of a catapult to get flung into the city, or the opposite, defending a city, right? Yeah, Gaster puts in a throwing spike. I mean, there's tons of things that I think maybe we don't do. And of course, the idea that there are things out there in the wild that may have nothing to do with the player characters, but they are all emblematic of war and battle. Like one of my classics is to reskin a dragon turtle as a steam powered tank of some sort created by like gnomes or dwarves or something, right? Spewing out steam. Maybe there's a big spiked chain on it or something. Maybe it's got like blades or like razor blade uh, like uh, Mach 5 speed racer blades on the front of it or something. Like maybe it's, you know, um, instead of gargoyles, they are statues of ancient warriors that are like, or golems or something that are running around from an ancient wars of the ancient past that just, PCs are going through the woods and they're like, oh, shoot, that isn't that from the fifth epoch? And it's like, yeah, we need to watch out for them. And these stone slash iron golems, whatever they might be, clay golems are like swinging at enemies and spouting out uh, something from a war that's long since gone. Undead would make perfect sense, right? Where the undead are still fighting battles that have long since ended, and they just raise up from the dust in the ground or from the muck in bloody battlefields to do battle yet again. And the PCs are like, oh, we've hit the, I don't know, eternal battle of Valnek or something, and the undead battalions are fighting each other, and they're not necessarily focused on the PCs, but the battle covered so many leagues of space that the PCs have to navigate their way through opposing forces of undead to get from one place to another, and then they just happen to see the PCs as just sitting on one side of the battle or the other, right, in their eternal battles to fight each other. Tired needs sleep says, going back to your warlock, a warlock fighter multi-class would be quite an interesting idea. The general planning a battle using arcane knowledge from his or her patron, gifting them weapons. So, oh, hell's yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, now mind you, I wanted to stay away from the multi-classing thing because, I mean, that's pretty easy, right? Like, if we world build with druids, you can, druid and multi-class is something else or whatever, but, and I'm not saying you wouldn't do that, but I was kind of like, I was backing myself into a corner by doing that. Like a bard and a warlock and a cleric might be indistinguishable from each other on the battlefield, right? Like they might be tacticians. We know as gamers they would have class features, but within this world, we may not be able to tell the difference between them by their capabilities, is what I'm saying. Oh, Gaster puts into the Discord the mirror of copying I take from its brother. Pretty cool. Thank you there very much. Putting in like images. That's actually I really like that as like a badge or something. You could even have an image on the inside of it that is a reflection of something that the soldier needed to take with them into the battlefield, but too large for them to take. That would be kind of cool. Cameron says the Sword of Nine Seas, aka the Swordfish, an intelligent blue steel sword who tells a lot of tall tales and flops like a dead fish when frightened. You're always ridiculous, but you know what? Finding ancient weapons on battlefields might be important. We know from both intellectual properties and real life that ancient weapons, I'm talking about you there, Excalibur, may have quite important aspects in the world. So for example, your charisma-based characters, it might not necessarily have to deal with their ability to speak and charm people. It might be that they have access to things that in that influences others because of what they have. So maybe your character isn't very a well-spoken individual, but you walk around with the hilt of the Excalibur, and everyone's like, "Ooh, oh, I should honor you because you've been the chosen who carries the Excalibur." But instead, what your character is a warlock, right? And you're so it comes across as like your Eldritch Blast isn't an Eldritch Blast, but it is a weapon that you carry on your back or something. Yes, I know there's the Eldritch Blade and all whatever, but you get my point. Where a wizard might not be a wizard, but they might be carrying around things about them because they have certain special capabilities and whatnot. And of course, the rogue fits into battle as a fighter as well. They just happen to be lightly armored, sneaking in and around combat. Sure, there might be some communities that are like, "You guys are dirty fighters," but then the rogue fighters in the battlefields are like, "Yeah, we might not have any honor, but we sure are badass." Although rogue fighters in battlefields don't necessarily have to be backstabbers; they just happen to be excellent combatants, right? It is called sneak attack. It is not called backstabbing. So it could just be that there's a fighting technique where they fight, side by side, back to back, and so it might be honorable fighting. It's just one in which it takes advantage of someone's inability to fight two or more people when they get surrounded or whatnot, i.e., flanking. Um, so anyway, guys, we're coming to the end. I'm going on a little bit too long here, but I do want to say to you guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Thank you so much, guys. By the way, I know we've been having some technical difficulties, so I really appreciate the fact that you've been able to join me here. Please come back to the show for Third Pillar Thursday, and also check down below all the information below on Twitch and YouTube as to who I am and what I do. Part of Critical Hit Publishing. Check us out on Drive Through RPG. Just do a search. Get on YouTube and do a search for the cinematic environs and understand what those are about. It's all about the third pillar. So please join me for Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday. Guys, have a great one. I will see thee later. Bye. Thank you so much.